which stems to cut on your squash, we're just simply going to cut the non-fruiting stems. So if you look at this squash plant, it's really clear which stems are just forming leaves and which ones form flowers. The ones that form leaves are going to have this cylindrical stem. It's actually hollow with this big flower at the end. Those that are flowering are going to have a much thinner stem. They're going to be closer to the interior, and they're all going to have a bloom coming out of them. Either one that's after a long stem, that's going to be a male flower, or one that has a little bulge right before the flower, that's going to be a female flower. So the quick answer is the only ones you're going to prune are the ones that are non-flowering stems.
Time of year where y'all ask me all your squash questions, so let's go do some squash stuff. So everybody loves to grow squash in their backyard. We all love it in our gardens, but we all fight the one dreadful pest, which is the squash vine borer. But did you not know there's also the squash bugs? Yeah, it's two different bugs, and they lay eggs that are very similar. So I'm gonna hunt around and see if I can't find one spot of both of these eggs so I can show you. The squash in question, okay? So squash bugs typically are these little brown looking stinky bugs, and they do smell like stinky bugs. I swear they're the same bug that will crawl around the base of the plant, okay? And when they lay eggs, they typically lay them in clusters on the back of the leaves. Let's see if we can find some. Well, it looks like I found a squash vine borer egg first. Okay, so tiny, tiny, tiny. Come on, camera. Get in there. Do you see this little bitty dot? That, my friends, is a squash vine borer egg. They lay singular eggs on the back of the stems, okay? And I'm gonna look crazy looking for eggs while I'm talking to you. But what this thing does is it bores straight into that vine, okay? And if you catch it boring into the vine and the plant's starting to limp, you can actually inject BT spray, which is a naturally deriving bacteria. And I just found some squash bug eggs. So right there, those are squash bug eggs. Notice how they're in a cluster. So we're just gonna wipe those off, right? There they are. So this is a couple of ways that I handle this pest, both of these, right? Like I just said, BT spray is a naturally deriving bacteria. It disrupts this larva, right? Kills it. It will not kill the bug itself. But what I have found is when you companion plant borage, you don't have near the problem. You see how long it took me to even find eggs for you? Typically, when I don't companion plant borage, I find them everywhere. Everywhere. So we're just gonna goodbye. We're gonna sprinkle it in there. Now, moving on with squash. So how do we hand pollinate? Because I know sometimes y'all will have vegetables coming out like this. It'll fall off. You freak out and think, oh God, what's wrong with my squash? Well, nothing, baby. It's actually just not been pollinated. That's it. So I'm going to show you, boop, how to pollinate it. All right, so your squash has two different types of flowers. It makes both male and female. So this one's female. Fruit is attached. This one is a male because it's just a stem. So we're going to top it off, right? And this is basically all I do. I tear off all the little limbs and petals, stick with this. Now we're gonna take this and tickle the female flower. Just like this, let's get it on. Oh, I'm cracking. And that's it. In a couple of days, that bloom will actually just fall off and the squash will continue to grow. Now, if you're seeing your squash fall off and kind of rot before it falls off, maybe due to a lot of rain, and that could also be due to no pollination because of all the rain. But just don't freak out. If you notice fruit falling off, try to hand pollinate it. If you still notice it falling off after that, you might have a calcium issue. That would be what us gardeners call blossom end rot. And that is usually derived from a calcium deficiency. There's some beautiful round zucchini. It's about that time of year.
All right. Here's a backyard tip for growing squash. If you're doing squash for the first time, take a tomato cage. Hopefully you have some lying around. Push it down around your squash. This is an acorn squash growing. And you want to get your plant to grow up through the cage. These little vines will naturally take hold of this cage, and it'll keep your plant growing upward instead of all around. And that will keep the leaves off the ground. So when you do start to see some squash bugs or some fungus, your plant will already be upward So you'll be able to easily spray it. It'll grow up and your squash vines will come around it. So I use the trick. It seems to help keep the plant healthy. All right, here's a back.
The one thing with any...
You're not bad at gardening, you're just using the wrong method. Squash edition. Summer squash, winter squash, doesn't matter. Same method for both. If you prepped your bed last fall, then you're off to a head start. But seriously, all you do is pull back whatever mulch you have till you get to the soil. Oh look, some worms. Worms. Hi guys. Here's what the soil looks like. Isn't it gorgeous? We're just gonna rough off a little spot, and then we're gonna make about an inch indentation. Then we're just gonna drop in 2 seeds, cover it back up, and mark where we planted them so we don't accidentally pull them later. Literally, that's all there is to it. It's so easy. You're not bad at gardening, you're just using the...
No one has ever passed the viral depression test.
Here are 6 easy steps to growing lots of squash. Number 1, choose the right variety. Are you growing summer squash, winter squash, or both? Summer squash is a lot more delicate and thin-skinned, whereas winter squash has a thicker skin and it stores for longer periods of time. Number 2, a sunny location with loose, well-draining soil. Number 3, good airflow with proper spacing, 12 to 18 inches apart. Number 4, choose the right nutrients. When first planting, use a fertilizer higher in nitrogen. Once it starts to flower and fruit, switch to one higher in potassium and phosphorus. Number 5, water deeply. 2 to 3 times a week unless you live in a hotter climate, then you can water more often. Number 6, keep those pesky squash bugs away. Use coffee grounds around the bottoms of your plants or use a neem oil soap mixture and just spray all over. Or better yet, just pick them off and squash them. Follow along for more gardening tips. Here are 6 easy steps to